I'm sorry for that.
Yeah.
Oh, cool, we're live now. All right, well, wonderful. Okay, so hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today in collaboration with the 45th Annual Cleveland International Film Festival and IFC Films. I would like to introduce you to Nicole Riegel, director of Holler, our community-partnered film. We are so excited to have her here. Nicole is named one of Variety's 10 directors to watch in 2020, which is amazing. She served in the military prior to her filmmaking and graduated from UCLA's MFA writing program. And she was named one of Filmmaker magazine's 25 Faces of Independent Film. She's been supported by Sundance through their Screenwriters Lab and the Skywalker Sound and Music Lab. And thank you so much for being here to speak with us about Holler. Anthony's going to answer you questions, or ask questions, sorry, answer you. And I will come back. So thank you so much. Nice to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on making Holler your debut film, your directorial debut. I mean, it's a really accomplished piece of work. It's something that I know that even living in like Northeast Ohio, I recognize a lot of the people, the environment, and your knack for details, performance, editing. I thought it was all really phenomenal. So thank you again for being here. And if you could start just by kind of, talk a little bit about yourself, your upbringing in Ohio. I believe Jackson, where the movie's set, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And your cinematic education and like how that kind of led to your professional career.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's so great meeting both of you. I'm from Jackson, Ohio originally, and I always wanted to make movies, always wanted to direct films, and Jackson, Ohio is in the very southeast corner of the state, and there's lots of filmmaking opportunities in Cleveland and Cincinnati, but the southeast corner of the state is pretty ignored. So there are very few resources to make film there. There's resources to make some art there, but I don't think people really think about filmmaking when they think of Southeast Ohio. And that's important to say because that's really salient to my upbringing is what do you do if you're growing up in Southeast Ohio and you're a kid who wants to be a part of the filmmaking community and you don't have a filmmaking community there? Are you supposed to commute to Cleveland, Ohio, or Cincinnati, Ohio, or Columbus, Ohio every day? And so I think the magic of and this wasn't part of your question, but part of the magic of Holler is that we brought a filmmaking community to Southeast Ohio, and I hope they and places like Southeast Ohio get filmmaking communities or some resources because there are really talented people and young people with amazing voices and amazing artists, and they just need to be nurtured. They just need a lifeline. They just need a community. And what I'm so proud of with Holler is that we brought a filmmaking community to a place that's so off the grid and where there are lots of young people who want to make art and they sort of feel forgotten,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually it's really interesting to talk about it in those terms because it's like you're saying, it almost is a desert in a way, and it's kind of landlocked from all of that. But just the lack of opportunities doesn't mean a lack of voices or
Right.
a lack of artists, and you're proof of that. So how did you kind of you're in UCLA's MFA program? So you made the choice to go to California?
Yeah, I initially, was just like I think most young people there. I applied to colleges and was accepted to colleges, and I initially didn't go because it felt to me just like the character Ruth in the film. It felt like a betrayal. I would be leaving behind the people who worked so hard to make sure that a kid like me from the Midwest could attend a really good university, and I didn't want to leave them behind. And that was something that was very real for me, and I didn't. And I stayed in that town after high school for a year and realized maybe this was a mistake too. But I just couldn't bring myself to leave because I felt like I was leaving behind everything I had ever known, and it was really scary. And it felt like a betrayal to some people in my family who worked so hard, who didn't go to college, who didn't really get to do any of the things that I'm doing now. Felt like I was betraying them at the time. I mean, in retrospect, I don't see it that way, but that's how it felt at the time. And so I ended up joining the military for a few years. I went that route, and it was adventurous, and I learned a lot. That wasn't ultimately what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a filmmaker. And then I, made my way here where I am now. I'm now for this interview in downtown Los Angeles. And I came here and I went to UCLA, and that was very daunting for me because I was in film school with kids, people who had film equipment when they were kids and who had all of the filmmaking toys sort of handed to them. And they had every opportunity in the world. And I didn't fit in. And it was not enjoyable for me at first, but I found my people and I made it work. And I just graduated to short films and then graduated into feature film and sort of took off as a writer, and writing became a day job for a while, and I made it work.
Yeah, it's so interesting how like that kind of class element would come into play while you're in college, while you're in school, because you do have the people who they've been able to pursue it as much as they want, and then you would have people who maybe haven't had those opportunities, but who have the fire and the need, passion to get the work done and to really make it. And it was interesting what you were talking about, like in terms of that feeling of betrayal in terms of leaving. Because what I loved about Holler is that you feel how, on one hand, Ruth sort of has this resentment towards her environment and towards things about her community. But then you do have, the love between her and her brother, the much more fraught relationship she has with her mother. These things where it's like you still feel this trepidation about leaving.
Yeah.
Even though she had this like very narrow opportunity, which I thought was just really, really affecting. So at one point you mentioned how you were in the military and stuff, and I think this was probably while you were still working in screenwriting. You mentioned something during an interview about the role that war and violence tend to play in your work, and Holler continues that, I think, mostly in sort of an implicit way, but also, obviously there's scenes where it happens very outwardly. Do you want to talk about that at all?
I mean, I think I remember the one you're referring to. I think that, for me, the recurring thing that I like to make in my work is really just stories about women and them having agency in their lives. And I think in this, there's violence in the film, and that plays a role just given the world of the film. But I think just coming from a place and a community that is a really wonderful place and a really truly wonderful spirited community, there's still such a lack of opportunity in that location, not for lots of people, but specifically for lots of young women. There really is. And I didn't see a lot of people like me on screen and in movies when I was growing up and wanting to make them. And every time the credits rolled, I didn't see, that this film was directed by a woman. I actually remember the first time I saw that it was Gina Prince Bythewood's film, Love and Basketball. And it's so great, right? And I saw that Gina Prince Bythewood made this, and it did have an impact on me. I was like, okay, all right, I can do this. I remember seeing that. But stories about class, class is another element that comes up with representation behind the camera. And I don't think there are enough people from the Midwest, sort of behind the camera, because art has sort of been relegated to these very sort of wealthier communities, and I don't know why the art world is like that.
It's actually really interesting because I guess in terms of the class question, especially in the wake of, like in 2016, you had all these, Trump's election, you had a lot of like major media publications in the country kind of reaching out to communities sort of like Jackson. And okay, can't wait for Holler to make its way to Dallas. We're getting some comments here from the audience. I'll continue to
I was wondering what those were.
Great. My due diligence in reading it, but
16 millimeter, yeah.
yeah, that is something I was planning on asking about because it's such a such a bold aesthetic choice, along with a lot of other choices that were made in the process of this film. Can you talk a little bit about the 16 millimeter?
Yeah, it's super 16 millimeter, which is a little different. And I'm a film nut, meaning like a celluloid nut. I recognize that. I just love film and actual film. And it's interesting because when we were showing early cuts or sharing early cuts of the film with test audiences, there were some younger people and by younger I mean teenagers in the audience, and they thought the film looked grainy because they're used to watching movies on their phones and on Netflix, and they look very, very clean, and they're not used to seeing actual film grain, and I'm not old, but it really made me feel old. That there's a whole community, a whole generation of people out there who are unfamiliar with film, and I think it's so beautiful. And I was sort of raised, by my grandparents watching Elia Kazan films and watching On the Waterfront, and my favorite film of all time, Splendor in the Grass, and watching The Deer Hunter, and I loved those really great American dramas, and I thought they were so beautiful, and that's something that completely informed the look of Holler. But it's shot on 16 because 16 is something that feels a little left behind, and you're making a film about a people and a place who feel left behind, and so it could only be shot on Super 16. And with Super 16, I wanted to have a little more range in the aspect ratio with the film. I didn't want to, crop it that much. But it was really because the characters feel so left behind that it had to be on 16. It couldn't be on digital.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned On the Waterfront because I was actually reminded of that movie a lot while watching this. In terms of that movie I think was called like sort of a semi-documentary film in a way, because at the forefront of the movie is this Marlon Brando, Carl Malden, the dramatic storyline, but then peopling it, you have these real life like dock workers and stevedores, and seeing those faces and seeing those real people interacting with this sort of Hollywood drama was always like really affecting to me. And I think it's interesting now comparing it to what you were talking about earlier in terms of how Hollywood presents poverty, and especially lately, you're getting a lot of films that seem to be coming very strictly from, I guess, a wealthy perspective that are still trying to present these things. And I thought Holler was such a necessary corrective to that, because you're seeing the reality of it in a way.
Yeah, and you're seeing that the reality isn't total despair.
Mm-hmm.
That people in Southeast Ohio have fun, they laugh. Everything's not horrible every second of their lives.
Yeah,
they do lots of things like the rest of the world does. It's not this exotic pocket of poverty. They tell jokes, they hang out, they have friends, they have full lives.
I think that was so cool too. Like the characters, even like all like the extras, characters who don't seem to like say too much, they do have these full interior lives that I think in other movies might be ignored. So you're a screenwriter by trade. Did this movie begin? When you started working on this? Did you know it was going to be your directorial debut?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that I was a screenwriter by necessity because I mean, filmmaking is my trade, and for the longest time, everyone said no to this movie, and it sort of forced me into not being able for a long time to direct. And you know, I knew that I knew I wanted to make this movie many years ago. But in filmmaking, there's so many pieces involved. There's so much money that gets raised for films. And the kinds of films that people want to finance are not, unfortunately, not like Holler for the most part. And I think there is an idea or a notion that people in the film industry have about what everyone else wants to see that isn't always true. I think there is an underserved audience out there for films like Holler, but the people making films like Holler, you have to show people in a certain way, in a fully realized way, and not just how depressing their lives are. I mean, that's a part of it, but showing, laughter and levity and having that be a part of their lives, because it's a part of all of our lives. So I hope I answered your question.
Well, I was thinking more. I think you're like you're in the territory of the question. Like,
Okay.
like when you decided, like, I want to direct, like, I'm going to direct this film. I think you're saying, like, the necessity arose from the fact that so many studios and fund financiers sort of stayed away from it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I guess another thing I'm interested in is the scripting process for something like this, because I recognize the kind of broad arc of it, but it also feels like, those moments of levity you're talking about, this real spontaneity to it. Did you, I guess, like, begin knowing exactly what this was going to be, or did it grow somehow while you were filming it?
I, it always, for me, it starts with an image. Like, I'll get an image in my head. Like, I knew the opening of the film was the first image I had when I wanted to make the film. I just sort of, I'm very visual. I sort of work more from a visual place than a literary place at first. I'll get an image, and then a character will sort of come to mind. And then I'll think about, who, who she's friends with, what does she do all day? It really starts with an image, and then a character, and then a story. Sometimes forms around that quickly, or sometimes it takes years. I mean, Holler, I didn't really put pen to paper for about a year, because I was just doing it. I was just thinking about it. I mean, I did that with my next film. I have one now I'm thinking about, and I probably won't put pen to paper for the one I'm thinking about now for another year. I'm almost like putting the movie together in my head for a long time. And so that once I sit down to write it, I don't stop writing it. I'm writing for a month straight, and I completely finish it.
Yeah, that's actually really, it's a really cool way to, like, think about it, because it becomes something that's developing before it gets, like, literally transcribed. We had a Facebook question from somebody asking who would be your dream actor to work with as a filmmaker.
Oh, I have two answers for that. I'm assuming they mean a professional actor or a seasoned actor. My favorite people to work with are what I call first timers, people I just find on the street or at work, or we just find them. And I have these amazing casting directors I work with, Carmen Leach, John Williams, and they find the most incredible people. That is my favorite part of filmmaking, hands down. And most of the people in Holler are that. And we throw the script away, and their real lives become part of the film. And nobody knows what the film's going to be like, because I haven't met them yet at that time. And we work their life into the film, and it's super cool, and it's amazing. my favorite, the actor, the dream actor. Oh my goodness. There's so many. I'm thinking on it. Go ahead and ask your next question. There's a few, and then I'll shout out the answer as it comes to me.
Okay, for sure. I guess my next question is going to be, when I first saw the trailer for this, I'm like, oh yeah, like this is like, this is Ohio for sure, and I recognize like some of that. But then I realized that I recognized the lead actress from a series on Netflix. It's called "The End of the Effing World."
Jessica.
I'm like, that's a pull. That's wild. Like it's so cool that you're able to get a performer like that to be in this film. And, getting, I think she's an English actress.
Yes.
To work and fit in this environment and never feeling out of place, feeling like a part of the community in this real way. Like how do you get something like that?
Yeah. I was making Holler sort of and casting it and in the process of it before that television show aired. And I was holding auditions in New York and in Los Angeles, and then we had tapes being sent from all over the world, England, Australia, Kentucky, just hundreds and hundreds of girls auditioning and for the role. And I had the freedom to sort of cast whoever I wanted. And Los Angeles auditions were coming up, and I received a call about Jessica Barton from a talent agent. And he was like, please meet with my client for this. You have to have lunch with her. And we had lunch, and she was so close to who the character already is with a different accent. And, she grew up, she told me the story of how she grew up in in Northern England and a working class place. And she just really convinced me in that lunch that she was this character. And she did so many little things that Ruth would do. And I didn't feel like I needed to change her. She didn't feel like this, at the time, this big famous actor who's going to go to Southern Ohio in a frozen scrapyard and let me film her without makeup and put power tools in her hands and be in the freezing cold with a cast and crew. I think there's a version that would have been really bad if it was anyone besides Jessica, who has such an incredible work ethic. And then she auditioned the next morning after that lunch. And then after her audition, she tracked down my email from someone. I didn't give it to her. She tracked down my email and sent me a TV film that she was in a long time ago called Ellen. And I'm a massive Andrea Arnold fan, and she thought that I might like it. And I watched the film and I was sold. But I was sold after the lunch.
Yeah, I love her posture in the movie. Because it's like it's got this kind of like the heavy shoulders almost, and the way she like would kind of like almost drag herself from one location to another. Like it just it's unique detail to the character.
Yes. By the way, my answer to the previous question is Michelle Williams.
Michelle Williams.
Yeah.
That's another movie this reminded me of was actually the Kimberly Reichardt film, Wendy and Lucy.
It's a beautiful film.
It is, and like obviously they're dealing with a couple of like similar ideas in terms of class and in terms of stability, and so that's a really cool answer.
That's also a film shot on Super 16, and I believe we use the same lenses as Wendy and Lucy.
Okay, yeah, that's really cool. Next question is from Kurt. What is your advice to an aspiring Midwest filmmaker?
Oh my God. Okay, I'll give you advice based on what I did wrong. I think that initially I thought that I would find the answers to filmmaking outside of where I came from. And I started writing things that were so different than my own backyard. Not that you need to write exactly all of your life experiences, but if your aspiration is to write things, direct them, edit them, like sort of be a one-stop shop and work with a few close friends and go make a film, you actually don't need to raise millions of dollars to do that. You can make a film on your iPhone. You don't have to use 16 millimeter film like me. You can go make a film. I mean, Sean Baker does that. You can go make a film. And I wasted so many years not realizing that. And when I could have made a film before I made Holler if I had realized that, and used the tools available to me and the people available to me. I think you use what you have right now with people you trust. You have a really beautiful location. Like I live in Los Angeles and I'm making films in Ohio, shot in Ohio. Like that's kind of crazy. You in the Midwest, use the Midwest. You have such a beautiful landscape that you know, like the back of your hand. And you might find aspects of it to be boring to you, but they're not boring. It's fascinating. Your film will be called exotic to people in France. Like, yes, everyone, like when it was on the festival circuit. I mean, it's on this festival circuit, but when it was on the 2020 festival circuit, I received an influx of messages from people in Estonia and France saying that Holler is so exotic. And I'm like, it's not exotic. It's Ohio.
Yeah. You can just go to Jackson, Ohio, any winter, and that's what it'll look like.
Hi again. This has been wonderful. Absolutely. I was just leading off of how the Midwest is such a beautiful place in Akron, and we invite you to visit the Nightlight if you're ever in this area. Yeah, it has been such a pleasure to have you, and it was such a great fit immediately when I was approached from IFC a few months ago about your film, and it was just brought out to me like, you have to show this. This is perfect for Akron. This is perfect for the city, and it's a story about Midwest life in this way. And I was like, when this came up to choose a film for the festival to support and be a community partner with, it was set, So thank you for the opportunity for us to partner with this film, and same with the Cleveland International Film Festival. It's been such a amazing delight to have you. And I love the film. I'm a huge film buff as well, and the tactility of it is just fantastic. So I really appreciate you for advocating for that. I'm on your side. So thank you. Yeah, thanks for talking with us.
Absolutely. It's so important to me that the film makes it to Ohio and doesn't just stay in the cities. I really want to bring the film to Ohio. So thank you both so much.
Well, we look forward to bringing it for a first run, at the Nightlight when we do reopen. So thank you so much.
Yeah, we're very happy about that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you.
All right. We will see you hopefully again soon.
Yes. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.